Are we just cargo on this boat, heading downstream, drifting to the few sea? Is this all we know? Words we're told, living in dreams, life is but one of those. How did we lose control? Strength, where'd you go? I'm not how I seem, but good thing nobody knows. I'm washing away, I'm washing away, I'm washing away. In the river of pain, we're washing away, we're washing away, growing number each day. The stars are twinkling, fading out, hard to see. Nothing left to keep me holding on, no way to hold back all my fears. But shouldn't I be relieved? All my emotions are coming out for you to see. They're coming out my eyes, mouth, and mind, flowing so violently. I'm worried about where the stream is going, but there's no chance of slowing, so I guess I'll just lay here and follow whichever way my emotions are flowing. They're washing away, they're washing away, they're washing away. Hopefully they'll wash away. Maybe someday we will all feel okay. No, let's be realistic. This will never go away. This will never go away. It will never flow away. We will never quite feel safe. There's nothing holding me at bay. There's nothing holding me to stay. I'll just keep floating away in the river of our pain. Hello and welcome. That poem you just heard is an original poem from my book called Maybe Someday, which I wrote when I was 18 years old and really in a tough time in my life, and started writing to try to help myself deal with those things. And this poem, In the River, was one that I wrote at a point when, so far the poetry I'd written before this that we've talked about so far on this channel was written just trying to understand and start coping with some of those issues. And then at this point, I kind of decided that I really wanted to just completely be done with this and overcome it, and tried to do something that was a bit more like I'm fully committed and extreme to just try to get through this as fast as possible, which is, I mean, looking back, of course, like an unrealistic thing, like overcoming depression and traumas and all kinds of stuff like that isn't something you can just defeat overnight or even within a week or a month or anything. Like it takes time, like years and years. Like even now, 5 or something years on from then, like I've made a lot of progress, but I'm still working on that stuff now. But of course, over that time, writing has helped me to slowly chip away at those things and start overcoming them slowly over time. But at this time, I had this idea of wanting to I set a certain time for myself. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but like a couple weeks or something, that I wanted to completely transform my mindset and everything and come out of it like feeling hopeful and like I wasn't controlled by these things anymore. And doing that really did help a lot, but I mean, ultimately it didn't completely like cure, so to say, all this stuff. But this one, in order to do that, I made a little mini series of poems that we'll talk about. They're the next, I think, 11 poems within this book that are sort of part of this little mini series that were written during that time period when I was really trying to actively start like completely overcoming this stuff. And to do that, I thought it would help to have some sort of concept in mind. As you might know, if you've been around here a little while, I am a massive fan of 21 Pilots, and I really admire how Tyler was able to sort of externalize and symbolize like the issues he was dealing with in that world of Dima and Trench and everything, and all the characters in this story they've been doing throughout their albums, and how putting them into this sort of fictional world he creates where everything is symbolic of something in his own life, and how that really helped him to be able to face his issues and overcome them over time. And so that's what I kind of wanted to try to do, like create my own little world. Not, of course, nowhere near to the scale and depth of it that he was able to do, but just my own little version of that. I was kind of inspired by that to try my own version of that. So for me, as you may know from my poem called Seafloor that I did a while back, which was very much about my cycle of depression and everything, water is kind of how I symbolize depression and everything. Like, so naturally, when I wanted to create this space to try to symbolize these struggles I was dealing with and try to work through them and everything, some sort of like water thing just felt right to do for that. And my idea was to overcome this. I need to really face it. I need to dive into the deepest parts of my internal struggles and like bring myself to the lowest I can be and get just like face head on right into the greatest depths and darknesses that I struggle with and just immerse myself fully in that. And then if I do that, I should be able to work from the bottom and build my way up. And so I created this space that I talk about in some of these. That's called the Fusey, as you would have heard in the poem, where I mention at the beginning drifting to the Fusey. So the Fusey is the space that kind of symbolizes this mindset and overall way I felt at the time. So this one is just meant to be a sort of lead in into that, like the intro, and just kind of represents the like hopelessness that I honestly kind of felt at the time, and then continuing on how I like intended to just put myself to the lowest I could so I could build my way up from there. It's like drifting down this river that just brings me to my absolute lowest into that few sea. And so that's why this poem overall is a largely very pessimistic one. There are, I think, some like little glimpses of hope and wanting things to be better and everything, but overall it's a very negative kind of sounding poem and was kind of meant to be that way because of the context I was writing it in. And of course, as we go through the next several poems in the book, we'll get a bit more of that story and how that progressed and overall ended when I finished that. And I mean, minor spoilers, as I kind of mentioned, it really did bring me to a better place and helped me to overcome some of my struggles, and at least to an extent, and bring me to a more positive, hopeful, happy mindset. But of course, with these things, as I said before, to completely overcome them is a much longer process than just a couple weeks or something. And so those things did return, and I had to again continue facing these things. But it was I was it through writing this poem and this one's following, I was able to sort of overcome that first obstacle. I was able to make some sort of progress, and even though some of that was pushed back, it did make some progress. And then it was kind of that idea of like that saying of how the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. I needed to take that first big step into like actively overcoming these things to kind of get that process going and kind of start giving me the confidence to keep taking steps and keep working on these things so I can eventually one day be free from them, or at least have some like better control and just minimize it all as much as I possibly can. So if we go kind of look through here, kind of stanza by stanza, and at some specific lines here, we'll see a bit more of what exactly I meant here, and just I can kind of explain some of my thought process and everything as I was writing it. So there at the beginning, I say, "Are we just cargo on this boat heading downstream, drifting to the few sea?" Kind of that part, like, are we just cargo? Like in this sort of journey of life that I'm in, feeling the way I did, just feeling essentially a lot like I had no control over these ways I felt and the things that happened to me and that I did and everything, because it wasn't who I wanted to be. It wasn't the life I wanted to be living, but it just felt inevitable. Like I was just this piece of cargo on this little boat that's carrying me along through this life. And I'm just an observer of myself. Like there was nothing I could really do. It was just completely out of my control. So then there's that next part. Is this all we know? Words were told, living in dreams. Life is but one of those. So again, kind of reflecting at the beginning there, how I felt like I had no control or say in these things that were happening to me and couldn't really speak up for myself and was just left with what people gave me and what people told me to do and everything. Like I'm just sort of like a mindless zombie, and felt like life was just this like dream, or rather in a lot of ways nightmare. And then also of course a little thing that I thought was a little clever was, of course, since this is about going down a river, and that first part I mentioned, like going in this boat and everything, kind of a play on like row 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 your boat, and that line in there of how life is but a dream, kind of making a little play on that, saying living in dreams, life is but one of those, as I drift down this stream. But yeah, then in that next part, how did we lose control? Strength, where do you go? I'm not how I seem, but good thing nobody knows. Sort of, I mean, in the beginning there, just wondering how, like, what went wrong for my life to go the way it did and for me to feel these ways I do, and just kind of questioning, like, when did I lose my hope and my strength and my happiness and all this stuff? And then after that, kind of, I'm not how I seem, but good thing nobody knows. Like, sort of trying to suppress all that and just put on a happy face and fake a smile. And when someone asks how I'm doing, I would always just say I'm doing good, and try to hide as much as I could how much I truly felt. When in reality, as I say after that, I'm washing away in this river of my pain and just growing number each day. Like truly, I am completely suffering and falling apart here, and just drowning in this misery I felt within, and just grew number and number to that. And again, kind of going back to Seafloor, that other poem of mine, where I talk about how depression and everything kind of became a place of comfort for me, and was where I felt most myself and most at home, because it had become so used to me, and I had kind of become numb to the suffering of it all. And so I kind of express that same idea here, where I say, like, we're washing away, growing number each day. Like the more I am stuck within this place, the more I just grow numb to it and accept that this is my reality and I'll never be anywhere else. So I might as well just make the most of it. And of course, that is never a like healthy or good mindset to have. And if you, of course, are in any sort of mindset, I truly hope that you're able to break that mindset and realize that no matter how much it feels that you're stuck there forever, or that this is the place you should be or what you deserve, that like truly it's not, and you can escape eventually. And it of course will take a lot of time, as I've said, and work. It's possible to find your way back up out of that depths that you've been stuck under. And at least for me personally, of course, writing was a way that really helped me to start actively working on that and getting to a much better place, and like to where I am now. And of course, as I've said, I still have more work to do, but I've made a lot of progress since the time that I wrote this a few years ago. So then there in that next part, I again tried to make a little reference to like a nursery rhyme kind of thing, referencing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, saying, the stars are twinkling, fading out, hard to see. Nothing left to keep me holding on, no way to hold back all my fears. And that part is, of course, a reference to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, as I said, and also my poem Focus on the Moon, which we talked about a little while back. And that one talks about how this like place I was in, of course, felt like very dark and everything, and like I was lost out in the night. And with that poem, I was trying to say how even though you may be lost in the night in this dark place out in the middle of nowhere, so far from home, if you can find like a moon in the sky to reflect the light to you, be some sort of little glimmer of hope to keep you going and trying to get to where you want to be, and just light your path ever so slightly, it's like infinitely better than pitch black darkness and absolute no hopelessness. Like that little glimmer of light, that little speck of hope can be like the complete difference in starting to overcome these things. And so here I'm saying how the moon and the stars and everything are kind of fading out, and I'm losing that hope and falling farther into the night. And there's nothing left to keep me holding on. I no longer have that moon in the sky to guide me through, or like whatever is that thing that brings me hope and keeps me holding on to my life and trying to grow and improve myself. And there's nothing holding back all the darkness within me and these fears I was dealing with. So then in the next part, I say, but shouldn't I be relieved? All my emotions are coming out for you to see. Kind of saying how now that I'm in this darkest place, I'm just overwhelmed with these emotions, and I can no longer hide and suppress it. It was just so overwhelming that, like, truly at the time, like, I was constantly, like, overwhelmingly depressed and sad, and, like, everyone around me could tell because I could no longer hide it so well because it was just so overwhelming. Like, no matter how much I wanted to suppress it and hide it, I just couldn't. It was, like, constantly visible. And so, as I say, then in the next part, they're coming out my eyes, mouth, and mind, flowing so violently. So, coming out my eyes, like referencing my tears and crying, and out my mouth, like the things I would say, like the ways I would speak or the things I would say were so impacted by the way I felt. And I would often say really like self hateful things or react a lot more negatively and hurtfully to other people because I was hurting so much inside. That's what came out. And like with my mind, the things I would think, the things I would create, and all that impacted by my mind, everything that would like come out of my mind was so negative because of the ways I felt. And it just grew to like this raging river of emotions flowing out of me constantly. So then the next stanza kind of shows how I was worried about where this would lead me eventually. Like this raging river, I was worried where it would take me down this path in my life, and was truly worried about my future. And like if I kept up at this rate doing the things I'm doing, feeling the way I feel, like my life is not going to go well. And this is where the sort of turning point here is in this poem, where yes, I feel completely overwhelmingly hopeless in a lot of ways, and like there's not much of a chance in overcoming this because it just felt too big of an obstacle to beat. There was that little bit of wanting to get there, even though it felt like it couldn't be done. And that, of course, is the first thing you really need to be able to accomplish anything, like a desire to do it. But even though I had that, of course, then there I say, but there's no chance of slowing, so I guess I'll just lay here and follow whichever way my emotions are flowing. Just kind of giving into that depression and everything and just letting it continue to take me and not act on those desires I had for myself. And so then I say that they're washing away, but hopefully they'll wash away. Maybe someday we will all feel okay. So even though I had kind of given in and let it continue to overrun me, again, I still have that hope that one day it'll be gone and I can feel better. And of course, as I've mentioned in several poems so far, there's that reoccurring thing of maybe someday that I say in so many of the poems in this book and didn't even mean to, because I wrote all these just for myself individually without the intention of ever putting them into a book or sharing them with anyone. And so then later on, a couple of years later, when I decided to do that and I was compiling them all together, I began thinking of what what I want to call the book, and I didn't really have a name until I had finished it all. And as I was looking through everything, I noticed that really commonly reoccurring thing of maybe someday that I kept just saying over and over in so many poems. And of course, this is another example of that, and ended up contributing to me naming the book Maybe Someday, Maybe Someday. And even though now this poem ends on a more negative note and a bit more of a hopeless place, saying how, like, realistically, this will never go away and I'll never feel safe, and how I'll just keep on floating away in this river of my pain. It is what led me to realize how awful of a place this was that I was in, and how much I really didn't want to be there anymore and needed to start taking those steps to overcome it. So the next few poems that we'll talk about that kind of took place during that time of my life and within this little mini world and story I created at this time, the next few of them kind of dive a bit more into those struggles and feelings and everything, and do deal with some tough negative things. But as we go, there are bits of hope at the end, and regaining strength and starting to overcome some of these things. And in the end, ending on a much more positive and happy note, and then lead to some of the most happy and hopeful poems that I wrote during that time, and lead to some of the most hopeful poems that I had ever written up to that point. And as I said, are kind of the first step in overcoming, like the first obstacles toward getting to where I wanted to be. And as we go up through the rest of this book, there's kind of a bunch of ups and downs, as kind of happens here, like going down, dealing with some tough things, and then kind of getting up to where I'm feeling more hopeful and getting to a better place, and then having that hope and trying to deliver a positive, inspiring message, and then kind of diving back into some other things or further into that thing before. And that's a lot of what the story of this book is, just trying to do my best with facing for the first time a lot of the struggles that I had built up all my life and had never chosen to deal with before, starting to acknowledge that there is a problem and it needs to be dealt with. And if I never do, I'll never get to a better place. And then, of course, at the end of this, I've done a lot of that. And while I'm not at an amazing place in life at the end of this, it's much better than it was at the beginning, and leads into my second book called I Love Him at Last, that continues from there and gets me truly to a point where I was able to find self-love. And, like, as the title references, I love him at last, like me and the person I've always been, kind of coming to terms with all that stuff I've been through and starting to find some forgiveness for everything I've dealt with, and ultimately getting to a much more hopeful and happy place with myself. And so, yeah, of course, if you enjoyed that poem or anything we talked about and would like to continue seeing the journey that I made with myself through writing, then I hope you'll consider sticking around and subscribing here, or checking out any of my past videos. And yeah, I'd love to have you here on this journey. So anyway, I think I've rambled on for long enough now, and of course, I just hope that I will see you here next time for the next poem in the book called Fireworks. But yeah, anyway, until then, thank you again for watching, and just remember, we're all broken and we're just arranging the pieces. Thank you.